Your comeback begins the moment you stop trying to return to the version of yourself that survived the damage. There is a season in an empath's life that looks like silence from the outside, but inside, something sacred is being rebuilt. People may think you disappeared. They may think you lost your spark. They may think you became distant, cold, tired, or less loving. But what they do not understand is that sometimes an empath has to become quiet before they become unstoppable. Because your comeback is not about proving them wrong. It is about finally proving to yourself that you were never as powerless as their treatment made you feel. This comeback does not begin with revenge. It does not begin with a public announcement. It does not begin with becoming cruel, bitter, or untouchable in a hateful way. It begins with one private decision. I will not keep losing myself for people who only love the version of me they could use. That sentence changes everything. For a long time, you may have been the one who understood, the one who forgave, the one who felt everyone's pain before anyone noticed yours, the one who carried the mood of the room, the one who stayed up at night replaying words that someone else forgot 5 minutes after saying them, the one who typed long messages, softened every sentence, apologized for your own hurt, and still wondered if you were asking for too much. You were not asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people to meet you where they had no intention of growing. And now something in you is changing, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. You are starting to realize that your old life was not built around love as much as it was built around emotional survival. You were surviving people's moods, surviving silence, surviving mixed signals, surviving guilt, surviving the pressure to be kind when your own spirit was tired, surviving the expectation that you would always understand, always adjust, always make room, always come back. But the comeback begins when survival no longer feels like home. There comes a day when the empath looks at their own life and whispers, I cannot keep calling this love if it keeps costing me myself. That whisper is not weakness. It is awakening. And the first rare trait that brings an empath into the biggest comeback of their life is emotional clarity after emotional confusion. For years, confusion may have controlled you. You kept asking, why did they do that? Why did they say that? Why did they pull away? Why did they come back? Why did they apologize and repeat the same thing? Why do I feel so heavy after being around them? Why do I keep trying harder for people who make me feel smaller? Confusion can become a cage because as long as you are confused, you keep searching for answers in the person who created the confusion. You keep returning to the same place that wounded you, hoping it will explain the wound. You keep asking for clarity from people who benefit from fog. You keep thinking one more conversation will free you, when sometimes freedom comes from accepting that the pattern already told the truth. The pattern is the answer. That sentence is painful, but it is also powerful. The apology without change is the answer. The repeated silence is the answer. The way your body tightens around them is the answer. The way you become careful with your own words is the answer. The way you lose sleep while they avoid accountability is the answer. The way you keep explaining the same pain to the same person is the answer. Your comeback begins when you stop needing the person who confused you to be the person who clarifies you. You begin to see clearly. You stop translating disrespect into trauma you must fix. You stop calling inconsistency complicated love. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop calling emotional crumbs potential. You stop saying maybe they did not mean it when the pattern has already shown you what they are willing to keep doing. Clarity does not make you cruel. Clarity makes you free. And when an empath becomes clear, everything around them changes. They answer differently. They wait differently. They love differently. They no longer rush to rescue the image of someone who keeps damaging their reality. They no longer make their own pain smaller so another person can avoid feeling guilty. They no longer abandon the truth just because the truth makes someone uncomfortable. This clarity may scare people who were used to your confusion. They may say you changed. They are right. You changed because you finally stopped negotiating with patterns that were slowly taking your peace. And that leads to the second rare trait of the empath's comeback, courage to become unavailable to what once controlled them. This is where the comeback becomes real, not when you understand the pattern. When you stop feeding it, there is a scene every empath knows. The phone lights up, the name appears. Your body reacts before your mind can speak. Maybe it is the person who hurt you. Maybe it is the friend who only appears when they need emotional support. Maybe it is the family member who knows exactly how to use guilt. Maybe it is someone who disappeared, returned, softened their voice, and expected the old door to open. The old version of you would have answered instantly. Not always because you wanted to, because your nervous system felt commanded. You would have explained, comforted, repaired, proved you still cared, proved you were not cold, proved you were not selfish, proved you were not abandoning them. You would have made yourself available even when your spirit was begging for rest. But the comeback version of you pauses. You look at the message, you feel the old pull. And then for the first time, You do not obey it. That moment may look small from the outside, but inside the empath, it is a revolution because you are no longer being controlled by guilt, no longer being controlled by silence, no longer being controlled by someone's disappointment, no longer being controlled by the fear of being misunderstood, no longer being controlled by the old belief that love means immediate access. You are learning that not every call deserves an answer, not every message deserves your nervous system, not every apology deserves your return. Not every sad tone deserves your self-abandonment. Not every person who misses you deserves the version of you they refuse to protect. This is not coldness. Cold does not mean cruel. Cold means you no longer burn yourself alive to keep emotionally careless people warm. Calm does not mean weak. Calm means your nervous system is no longer public property. Uneachable does not mean broken. Uneachable means the old access point has closed. This is the comeback people do not recognize at first. They think your power will look like success, attention, beauty, money, status, applause, or a dramatic transformation. But for an empath, sometimes the biggest comeback is simply being able to say no without shaking, being able to rest without guilt, being able to miss someone without returning, being able to love someone and still choose distance. That is power, quiet power, the kind that does not need revenge because it has self-respect. And the third rare trait of the empath's comeback is the ability to turn pain into discernment instead of bitterness. Many people go through pain and become hard. They close, they attack, they stop believing in anyone. They call every feeling weakness. They treat every new person like a suspect because someone from the past damaged their trust. But the true empath's comeback is different. You may become more careful, but you do not have to become cruel. You may become more private, but you do not have to become empty. You may become more selective, but you do not have to become hateful. You may become harder to manipulate, but you do not have to become less loving. That is rare because pain will always offer you two doors. One door says, become like what hurt you. The other says, become wiser than what hurt you. And the empath's greatest comeback begins when they choose the second door. You stop using your pain as proof that everyone is unsafe. You start using your pain as information about what you will no longer ignore. There is a difference. Bitterness says, I will never trust anyone again. Discernment says, I will trust slowly and watch consistency. Bitterness says, everyone will hurt me. Discernment says, I will stop handing sacred access to people who have not earned it. Bitterness says love is dangerous. Discernment says love without boundaries is dangerous. Bitterness closes the heart. Discernment protects the heart. The comeback empath learns this difference deeply. They begin to notice who brings peace and who brings performance, who listens and who only waits to speak, who apologizes and who actually changes, who celebrates them and who quietly competes, who respects their boundaries and who punishes them for having any, who drains their energy and who restores it. And they stop apologizing for noticing. That is a major part of the comeback. You stop gaslighting yourself. You stop saying, maybe I am too sensitive when your body has been giving you the same warning for months. You stop saying, maybe I am overthinking when the pattern keeps repeating. You stop saying, maybe I should be more patient when patience has already become self-erasure. You begin trusting yourself again. And that is where the comeback becomes emotional, spiritual, and physical. Because every time you trust your own knowing, your body begins to relax. Every time you honor your discomfort, your nervous system learns that you are safe with yourself. Every time you leave a situation that feels wrong, the younger version of you inside begins to believe. Someone finally believes me that someone is you. The comeback is not just becoming stronger. It is becoming safe inside your own presence. For years, you may have been safe for everyone except yourself. People came to you because you understood. They brought their pain, their secrets, their confusion, their guilt, their loneliness. They felt better after speaking to you. But after they left, you were the one holding all the weight. You were everyone's shelter. But where did you go when you needed shelter? That question may hurt, but it can also bring you home because the fourth rare trait of the empath's comeback is self-loyalty after years of self-abandonment. This is the trait that changes your entire life. Self-loyalty means you stop leaving yourself to keep others close. It means you stop laughing when something hurts just to keep the mood light. It means you stop saying yes when your body is saying no. It means you stop explaining your pain to people who keep making it negotiable. It means you stop carrying relationships alone. It means you stop calling one-sided emotional labor love. Self-loyalty means your peace finally has an advocate, you. And for an empath, that can feel unfamiliar at first. You may feel guilty for choosing yourself. You may feel selfish for needing space. You may feel cruel for not replying instantly. You may feel uncomfortable when someone is disappointed in you. You may feel the old instinct to soften every boundary until it disappears. But guilt is not always truth. Sometimes guilt is just old conditioning screaming because you are no longer obeying it. Maybe you were trained to be useful before you were allowed to be honest. Maybe you learned to read the room before you learned to trust your own feelings. Maybe you became the calm one because chaos around you demanded it. Maybe you became the strong one because nobody protected your softness. Maybe you became the forgiving one because conflict felt unsafe. But your comeback begins when you stop letting old survival skills run your adult life. You can be kind without being available. You can be loving without being consumed. You can be understanding without being responsible. You can be gentle without being easy to use. Self-loyalty does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop caring about people at the cost of abandoning yourself. There is a moment when this becomes real. You are sitting alone, maybe in your room, maybe in your car, maybe after another conversation where you left feeling smaller than before. Everything in you wants to explain again. You want to send the message. You want to make them understand. You want to show them your heart one more time. But then you realize something. You have already shown enough. You have already explained enough. You've already forgiven enough without change. You have already made yourself easy to love by becoming less honest. And suddenly you choose silence, not the silence of fear, the silence of self-loyalty. That silence says, I am no longer placing my worth in the hands of someone who keeps dropping it. That silence says, I am no longer trying to convince people to value what they were comfortable using. That silence says, I choose myself now. And when an empath truly chooses themselves, the comeback becomes unstoppable, not because every day becomes easy, but because the direction changes. You are no longer walking back into the same fire, hoping it will become warm instead of burning you. You are no longer chasing people who run from accountability. You are no longer calling confusion a connection. You are no longer letting your compassion become a doorway to your own exhaustion. You begin walking toward peace slowly, privately, consistently. And the fifth rare trait of the empath's comeback is the ability to rebuild quietly without needing the world to witness it. This is where the comeback becomes sacred. Not every transformation needs an audience. Sometimes the biggest comeback happens in silence. In the mornings when you wake up and do not check for their message first, in the nights when you choose sleep instead of spiraling, in the moment you stop rereading old conversations, in the small decision to eat, shower, walk, clean your room, pray, breathe, create, work, rest, and return to your own life. The world may not clap for these moments, but your soul does, because these are the moments where you stop letting the past own your body. You start rebuilding the parts of yourself that were neglected while you were trying to save everyone else. Your routine, your health, your dreams, your creativity, your confidence, your voice, your joy, your ability to laugh without guilt, your ability to sit in quiet without feeling abandoned, your ability to be alone without feeling unwanted. This comeback is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the person you were before pain convinced you to shrink. Maybe there was a version of you who felt alive before you became emotionally responsible for everyone. A version who dreamed freely. A version who loved music, movement, beauty, writing, learning, creating, exploring, becoming. A version who had desires before other people's needs swallowed them. A version who laughed easily before they learned to scan every room for danger. That version is not gone. That version is waiting behind the survival patterns. Your comeback begins when you start making space for them again. This is why healed empaths become magnetic. Not because they chase attention, not because they perform confidence, not because they become loud, but because their energy begins returning to them. The light that was leaking into one-sided relationships comes back. The peace that was buried under anxiety rises again. The voice that was silenced by guilt starts speaking again. People will feel the shift. Some will celebrate it. Some will resent it. Some will try to pull you back into the old role. They may say, you changed, let them. You did. You changed because you stopped surviving as someone else's emotional shelter. You changed because you stopped making your pain convenient. You changed because you stopped calling self-abandonment love. You changed because the version of you that kept returning to the same pattern finally became too tired to betray itself again. And there is nothing wrong with that. Your comeback will confuse people who benefited from your breakdown. They may not call it that, but they benefited from your lack of boundaries, your forgiveness without change, your availability, your guilt, your fear of being misunderstood, your need to prove your heart. When those things disappear, they may act like your healing is the problem. Do not believe them. Your healing is not the problem. Your healing is the evidence that the problem no longer controls you. And now the practical step, every comeback needs a daily decision, not just an emotional realization. So ask yourself each morning, what is one thing I can do today that proves I am no longer abandoning myself? Not 10 things. One, maybe it is not replying to a message that only pulls you into guilt. Maybe it is taking care of your body before taking care of everyone else's emotions. Maybe it is saying no without a long apology. Maybe it is working on the dream you kept delaying. Maybe it is cleaning your space. Maybe it is choosing silence instead of explaining. Maybe it is going outside and letting your nervous system remember that life still exists beyond the person or pattern that hurt you. One thing every day. That is how an empath rebuilds, not through sudden perfection, through repeated self-loyalty. One day, you will look back and realize the comeback did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in hundreds of small moments where you did not betray yourself, hundreds of moments where you chose peace over panic, truth over performance, boundaries over guilt, rest over emotional labor, self-respect over access, your future over the fantasy of who someone might become. That is how you become free. And freedom does not always look like what you imagined. Sometimes freedom looks like fewer people around you, but more peace inside you. Sometimes freedom looks like being misunderstood, but no longer explaining yourself to people who do not want truth. Sometimes freedom looks like missing someone and still not reopening the door. Sometimes freedom looks like becoming private, selective, calm, and hard to manipulate. You are not becoming darker. You're becoming harder to control. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. You're not becoming unreachable because you are broken. You're becoming unreachable to the patterns that only knew how to access your wounds. They did not lose your love. They lost access to the unprotected version of it. And that is why your comeback is different. You are not coming back to prove you are better than anyone. You are coming back to remember that you are enough without being needed, chosen, chased, approved, explained, or understood by the wrong people. You are coming back to yourself, to the body you ignored, to the dreams you postponed, to the peace you thought you had to earn, to the voice you made smaller, to the child inside you who kept waiting for someone to say, you matter too. You matter too, not only when you help, not only when you forgive, not only when you understand, not only when you make other people comfortable. You matter when you rest. You matter when you say no. You matter when you are quiet. You matter when you need space. You matter when you disappoint people who are benefiting from your silence. You matter when you choose yourself. That is the heart of your comeback. The empath's biggest comeback is not becoming untouchable. It is becoming whole. Whole enough to love without disappearing. Whole enough to care without carrying. Whole enough to forgive without returning. Whole enough to be kind without being used. Whole enough to be alone without feeling worthless. Whole enough to be seen without needing approval. Whole enough to be misunderstood without abandoning truth. That kind of wholeness cannot be taken from you easily because it was not given by applause. It was built through pain, silence, clarity, boundaries, and the sacred decision to stop leaving yourself. So let this be the beginning. Your comeback begins now, not when they apologize. Not when they finally understand, not when the world notices, not when everyone sees your glow, not when someone regrets losing you. Your comeback begins the moment you choose not to return to the version of yourself that had to suffer to feel loved. And when the next chapter opens, remember this, the people who once knew how to trigger you may still try to reach the old you, but the old you is no longer standing at the door. Your comeback begins when you stop trying to be who pain made you and start becoming who peace was waiting for you to be.